The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. Happy Friday. It is March 1st, March Madness coming up, but we've got NHL hockey to talk about on today's show, powered by NorthStar Bets. You can check out NorthStar Bets via the link in the description below. I'm Andy MacNeil, your host. I'm going to be joined by Nick Martin from the Action Network in just a little bit here. Lots of hockey to talk about. 3 games on Friday, big slate on Saturday. Just generally going to get you set up for the weekend with projections and picks from myself and Nick. Right off the bat, I am going to get this out of the way and just kind of list the 3 money line plays that are catching my eye really early here. Might have guessed it. I try to coordinate my hats when I can to my favorite bets. And my favorite bet for Saturday is the Nashville Predators plus 117 on the money line. That's a 1-unit play. And I've got 2 smaller plays. Well, the Florida Panthers, not so much a smaller play as they are minus 147 on the money line. This one moved a little bit, opened up at minus 135 at NorthStar Bets, but has since ticked up. They're in Detroit taking on the Red Wings. I think they should be priced closer to minus 161. So give me the Florida Panthers to win a half unit at minus 147. And also give me the Toronto Maple Leafs at minus 112 to win a half unit over the New York Rangers on Saturday. But just wanted to get that out of the way because, like I said, Florida already did move a little bit. Who knows what could happen in the next 15, 20 minutes here. And nothing pisses me off more than having what I think is a plus EV play starting the show and, finding out that it moved in the time that I was, talking my ass off here. So anyway, get the 3 plays out of the way. We'll talk about them as the show goes on. But yeah, going to bring in Nick from the Action Network Hockey Podcast. Line change. Nick, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Yeah. Thanks for having me again, Andy. I'm pumped. I think we're going to have a lot of good stuff to get into.
For sure. Yeah, Nick is actually a spy sent from Turkey to try and encourage me to go get a hair transplant. But I'm gonna ignore that anyway. Nick, did you have a good night on Thursday? I know you had the Islanders against my Red Wings pick, which almost, I almost got the gloat in your face about that one, but you humbly got the win and were the better handicapper on Thursday night. But you did suffer a pretty lousy push on that total I saw with a wild third period in the Los Angeles and Canucks game.
Yeah, and it was specifically worse for me. I had given out 6.5s to all our followers and had recommended that because it was available. But in Canada, there wasn't really any good 6.5s. So I did suffer a push there. Second time this week that I've had pretty much exactly that beat. Had the opposite end of things in the Stars Avs over the other night. So
it was 4 goals in the third period, right?
There was last night.
Yeah,
4 goals, and then the night before 0 goals from like mid-second on. So I'm a little down on some of these beats this week, but last night finished up okay, so it makes it a little easier.
Right on. Okay, cool. Yeah, I won a very small amount, about a quarter unit, all things considered, with the Sabres getting a win, plus 150 on the money line, like them down to plus 145. They were tough. They didn't get a lot of great chances, but somehow managed to tie the game and get one past Andrei Vasilevsky in overtime to get the win. But like I said, the Red Wings, they were not able to complete the comeback. They put in a valiant effort, but no, not able to complete the comeback. So a 1-1 split on Thursday. Looking ahead to Friday, I don't have anything. Looking at the Philadelphia Flyers and the Washington Capitals, the Arizona Coyotes, the Ottawa Senators, the New Jersey Devils, and the Anaheim Ducks. Of course, the Coyotes played on Thursday in Toronto, losing 4-2. The Ducks got a win over the Sharks 6-4 in San Jose. So both teams had to travel and are on the second half of a back-to-back. The Flyers and the Capitals game, I think, is intriguing, mostly just due to the injuries. We've got a couple of question marks in Washington. Tom Wilson missed practice due to personal reasons on Thursday. Not sure what his status is heading into Friday's game against the Flyers. And yeah, the Flyers, they've got Jamie Drysdale on IR. Of course, Travis Konechny, no timetable for his return right now, according to John Tortorella. That's a huge loss because I feel like Konechny in a lot of ways is the engine of this Flyers team. He's plays with a ton of tenacity. He's I think he's an underrated pest around the league. I don't know if he's underrated, but I think his pesty qualities are a bit underrated around the league. I'm not sure as many people know. Like if the Flyers get into the playoffs and start to become a playoff team again, I think a lot of people are going to just start to hate Travis Konechny really quick and on a lot of other fan bases. So that's a big loss for the Flyers. And Sean Couturier playing as the fourth C the last time out. Not sure what's going on there. Not injury related, according to Tortorella. He just felt that some other players deserved some of Couturier's minutes. So I'm not sure what to make of the Flyers right now. A lot of uncertainty with that lineup and with the Capitals lineup. But do you see anything that you like on Friday, Nick?
Yeah, I liked Philly quite a lot at open. I know the numbers have drifted a lot, so now I'm kind of in the pass range. But this goes back. I think this is a really interesting game because I specifically think Spencer Carberry is incredibly underrated in this Coach of the Year race. But that's also part of the reason I like Philly tonight because Torts is working with so much more up front. Even with Konechny out, I think they have way more. Like Morgan Frost could come on the Caps this year and probably be their best forward or close to it. And like I get that part of the reason he was getting healthy scratched early on was because of his defensive play, and credit to Torts for that. Like you said, he'll play Couturier on the fourth line. He'll do whatever he thinks is the move. There's no, leniency into just being like, all right, this is my guy, this is my veteran. I'm not going to like call the shots. He does what he has to do. So I respect that. I do think that the Flyers still have a lot more talent up front. I think that what Carberry's trying to organize into a playoff team is just drastically lesser. I think he's really fighting an uphill battle. They've got half the Hershey Bears up there playing on the team. And those aren't even really the bad players on the team, don't get me wrong.
No, I'm okay with the Capitals giving their young guys a shot, right? I think
For
like
sure.
given their where they're at and they're so long in the tooth, I mean, what's the worst that can happen, right? Look,
I
we've
mean, it's
seen
better than
guys like
last year.
Malenstein have kind of come out this year, so it's not a bad thing, I don't think.
For sure. And like Protas has been really good. McMichael's been excellent. Those are some of the guys pulling the weight, but that's the problem is they don't have any of these established stars anymore. Essentially, none of them are making a difference really every night. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
Nick Dowdhurst, trade
yeah,
rumors,
for
etc.
sure. He's
TJ Oshie out, Martin Farabee out. Yeah, it could get really ugly for the Caps for sure.
Yes, I just think what we've seen from Philly lately, feel like they deserve to be a bigger favorite than they were at open. I don't know what numbers are left out there too much, so I don't know if we need to dwell on that one too greatly. But yeah, definitely a Philly or a pass for me on that game.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree with your points. I don't, for me, as far as the number goes, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty there. You see the model has Philly minus 118. That's, kind of assuming that there's a 50-50 chance that Tom Wilson doesn't play. He still is an impact player, in my opinion, enough to move the needle a little bit here. So, yeah, the Flyers would be a bigger favorite if he's actually out of the lineup. We'll see what the Capitals lineup looks like. But yeah, I mean, I do have a little bit more respect for the Caps right now than I did maybe a month ago, though. I think they've been playing pretty good. They've, kept at playing pretty good. Let me say that relative to where they were this season. I don't think, I think all things considered, they're, a capable underdog bet at times, but this is not a spot where I would look for them to do it in. And we saw them take down some good teams on the road and over the last couple of weeks, like the Lightning, for example. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Washington is in a spot here where they would be a worthy bet at the currently the best odds in market plus 126. So yeah, if Wilson plays, maybe I would consider a smaller bet on the Capitals on Friday night, but yeah, like I said, this one is something where I'd probably wait until post or until at least till warm-ups to find out what the status is on the Caps lineup. But yeah, I mean, I've liked this Flyers team all year long. I've never thought that they've been not all. I shouldn't say that. I actually came into the season thinking they were going to be awful, but changed my tune pretty quickly. They put up some really good numbers early, and they were really consistent with those numbers, so it was easy to change my tune. But yeah, I mean, it's yeah, they've got a back-to-back. They are in action. Looks like Felix Sandstrom. That's another funny Torts thing. He was asked if Cal Peterson was going to get another start, and he just said no. And the reporter followed up with like, why? And he said, well, I just don't think he was very good. And um, Felix Sandstrom and him have comparable AHL numbers, so he got a shot, and now Felix gets a shot. He is so funny. I mean, I do think he plays it up sometimes. Like, I think he does a little bit more than he maybe has to, but it's definitely an act. It definitely is an act, because I think if you see Torts out of that element, you see him like, there was a video, for example, posted, he was visiting some kind of dog shelter or something, dogs being adopted and whatnot, and he's just like totally different human being, right? Like, and I think you got to take that into to context when you're talking about Torts. But yeah, his quotes this season and last season since joining the Flyers have been plentiful, and have been pretty hilarious. But yeah, some sports books, some of the faraway places, having the Flyers as high as minus 145 now, and NorthStar Bets has minus 135, plus 112 on the side of the Capitals. I guess the other game I want to talk about, I mean, the Coyotes, they've lost, what, 14 games in a row now? Is this? I think it was 13 heading in. You kind of lose count, right? 13 heading into last night. They lost 4-2 to the Maple Leafs. This one is one where it's like, I understand why my model has the Senators winning this game almost 66% of the time. Matches up closely with the market, but you know, the Senators are not a team that I'm they're kind of on that list of teams that I'm not looking to back in these spots. There are a lot of bets I can make throughout the run of the NHL regular season. I can afford to pass on some of these edges, unless there's some kind of really egregious difference here between what my model says and what the market says. But that's not the case. Sens are basically a minus 185 favorite across the board here. So 9 cents, not really much of an edge when you're talking about a minus 185, minus 190 favorite. But they have been good as a team. They've been pretty good in these situations where a team comes in tired to Ottawa. Overall, the Sens have performed all right in these situations. Don't have up-to-date numbers in front of me, but it makes sense. And then there's a little bit of situation with Arizona possibly not having Jacob Chikrin in the lineup tonight. I don't know if there has been any update on that. We know they won't have Clayton Keller, but I think arbitrarily it would be like, if there was a spot to buy on the Coyotes, this might be it. I just can't get there based on what my model is saying. Do you have any feelings on this one, Nick?
Yeah, I like the Coyotes, and kind of for some of the
Oh,
reasons you said. I think the Senators are a really volatile team. They're on their good nights they'll beat some great teams. On their bad nights, they've had some huge letdowns versus Columbus and Chicago. That Chicago loss was really what sent them into this final, like, it's over tailspin.
yeah,
And the main thing for me, I know that it's a really bad schedule spot for the Coyotes at the end of this road trip. But the thing for me is all three of these, and I think this point has been true for a lot of this losing streak. Like, it really has just been the absolute worst possible version of every single game for the Coyotes. I think they
yeah,
literally could have had 6 wins out of this road swing. And you look at the last 3, they lose in overtime to the Jets. I would say if you rewatch that game, they were probably just straight up the better team. Same story in Montreal. And I thought last night they hung really tough in Toronto. And the data agrees. They have a 57% expected goals rating in those 3 games, which I know 3-game samples can get skewed pretty quickly. But I think when you're going to throw that number out there with the idea that they have like watching all 3 games, they clearly were a really scrappy underdog bet. So I don't love the scheduling spot. I think it's a little scary, but I don't think they've quit. I think they really want to get this thing over with. And, I think we're getting a pretty decent number to target them when I think about the way this can go. And I don't mind the Keller loss. Like, I think I know it really sucks. He's their leading scorer, but they have offensive talents to help cover that. Like, Michelli is so nasty on the power play. I don't really think it's as big of a loss there. And they still have a lot of really competent forwards. The problem's been the blue line. Like, some of these guys, I don't know how Dumba's getting his name out there in trade talks. It's insane because he's having a really, really bad year. And then the other thing that's killing them, and I know it's going to be part of the problem tonight, is Vejmelka has been really bad in goal. They're getting league worst goaltending over the losing streak. So I think it's kind of been the perfect storm of things to make them look like the worst possible team. The only non-playoff teams that they've played over this entire losing streak were the Canadiens and the Wild. I don't even know the Wild didn't play great last night, but they're 8-2-1 ahead of that. So it has been too that like I think the teams they've been playing have been in such good form that they just can't find a spot to win. So it's not a great spot, but I really think they are playing a lot better than kind of their results are showing. So I don't hate buying at all. It's one of those ones if if they got smoked, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But the other
Yeah,
the other
it's
thing is
range of outcomes, right? I always say
right.
it's
I think it's kind of a
best to
very
think of a range of outcomes when you're making bets and
yeah.
think probabilistically, right? But yeah, looking at the Arizona Coyotes on the road, they've been an underdog of plus 165 or worse 14 times this season on the road, and they've won 2 games. So haven't performed great as a big underdog. And the Sens only 4 games at home this season where they've been priced at minus 175 or higher. They're 3-1. They've scored 6 goals in 3 of those games, 4 goals in the other in the loss to Buffalo back on October 24th. That coincidentally was also a game in which Buffalo was playing tired. They had played the night before. Just kind of looking here quickly.
Yeah, the other thing
Uh,
I would throw out there too is that they have confirmed Korpisalo. He's been the
yeah,
league's worst goaltender to this point. So
for sure.
um, I think that's also obviously a really, really relevant note. Not that we're thrilled with Vejmelka, but I just think there's too much volatility, and I
I
like
do
the way
wonder
that
about the over in this one, like
I think the over
just
is a
kind of
good bet.
arbitrarily. I think it's a maybe a one worth looking at there, right?
Oh yeah, I think, and then the other one I think is that would be perfectly fine is if you want to do some team totals on the Coyotes as well.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
desperate team. It could be a lopsided game where they're playing from behind with score effects in their favor. That all could work into the
Well, and
Coyotes' favor for
they've
a team
generated a
total.
lot in these 3 games. Like, they've generated 3.65 expected goals for per 60, and I think it's looked every bit like that. They were full value to their 3 goals versus Winnipeg. They could have had a lot more last night versus Toronto. Joseph Woll was really good. They had some funny sequences in front of the net that they didn't quite finish. And then versus Montreal was ridiculous. It was Montembeault bobblehead night, of course, and he really showed out for the event because he was really good. So yeah, I do think they're kind of pressing to get this thing over with.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's in the sense, it's a tough spot, but Ottawa plays a lot of games in these situations where teams are coming in tired. This is, they're being in such close proximity to places like Montreal and Toronto. It's just the way the schedule works out. They've played 8 games so far this season against road teams on 0 days rest, and they are 4-4. But obviously, only not even a handful, three of those games they were priced around the minus 150 or more. So got to take that into account. But yeah, I mean, will the Senators likely win tonight? Yeah, probably. But I yeah, they're still the Senators. I think that's what you got to remember. So yeah, it's and the only other one is New Jersey at Anaheim. Before we get into Saturday, I want to bring up the Calgary Flames. Nick, you're living in Calgary, so you follow this team really closely. I don't follow it as closely, and I was kind of shocked to see the Flames come out and say that they're holding on to Jacob Markstrom. They want to send the right message to the team. Like, what kind of message are they sending? They've already traded their number one center. They traded their second best defenseman, and they're shopping their number one defenseman in Noah Hannafin. Markstrom is 34 years old. He's having arguably the best season of his career, and he's not going to get any better. The Flames aren't going to get any closer to a Stanley Cup, I don't think, in Markstrom's time as a Calgary Flame. They're further away now from a Stanley Cup, being a Stanley Cup contender than they've been probably since, prior to getting Gaudreau and Kachuk, prior to those years. Like, it's all circled back to a rebuild at this point, in my opinion. So, what do you think's going on in Calgary? Why on earth would they hold on to Jacob Markstrom heading into the NHL trade deadline?
Yeah, my first take is that I do think that was probably a bit of angling. I think they haven't actually 100% ruled out that they would move
I would
him or
hope so.
not. They just want the right package. But I'm right with you. It's going to be so hard in the time. And this is maybe why I think they can't fully commit to a rebuild right now. And it just shows how bad the picture is. But it's going to be so hard in the whole Kadri Huberto era where they have those 2 contracts to build a winner. So I don't even know how to like get into it at all. But yeah, and the ownership group supposedly passed on a really decent package for Markstrom because they didn't want to retain. I buy that given what we know about this ownership group as well. Fans
Yeah,
aren't
they
really
don't want to
happy.
spend money.
Yeah, and what you say about the right time to sell Markstrom, I think is so accurate because it's not like he's a bad goaltender, but like you say, 34, his value's
There's
never
never
going to be
going to be
higher.
another time like
It
this,
was
right? He's
only 2
only
years
going to go
ago.
down.
Yeah, I mean, it was only 2 years ago, he's the whipping boy when they lost to the Oilers, and I think they were losing that series no matter who was in goal with some of the chances that, Edmonton was getting, but I think it just works so well to the point that you just trade your 34-year-old goalie when his value's at his highest and live with the result. So, yeah, I'm with you. I really think they should be trying to trade him, and, we'll see if they actually do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. But along with UC Saros, Markstrom could make a fringe playoff team, a contender, could make a contender with some goaltending issues. Another guy that's out there now that you're hearing, I read an article from my buddy Steven Wino with the Associated Press this morning, and he was talking about Charlie Lindgren possibly being a trade deadline chip that the Capitals shop. And I mean, that could be a great pickup and maybe one that's flying a bit under the radar with all the talk about Markstrom and Saros. I think Lindgren could be a really good stopgap for a team that's looking to bolster themselves at that position.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been great. As a Caps fan, I really want them to trade him because there's just no way in this world that holding 2 quality goaltenders makes sense for a fringe team right now. Like, I just think it's an asset that you trade and get out there. And yeah, I do wonder if he'll be the guy who ends up getting dealt to one of these teams just because it's such a more manageable trade to negotiate compared to how complicated you would need to make the packages and the cap management and everything with a Markstrom trade. So yeah, well, that'll definitely be something to watch. And I'm with you. I think the number one most obvious team and thing that could probably kind of really change the cup outlook heading into next week would be if Carolina did trade for a stud goaltender. But the question is, are they going to want to? Their goaltending situation's really complicated. They're getting some okay play from Kochetkov. They've got Anderson kind of waiting in the wings. So I mean, I'd like to see them do it as someone with Carolina futures, but I'm not so sure they will end up pulling the trigger.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess let's get into Saturday. The Capitals, I think, could be one of the more interesting teams heading into the trade deadline. But it's all speculation, and I don't actually know anything, so there's not much sense in me, blabbing on about trade deadline rumors. But it'll be an interesting week leading up to the March 8th trade deadline. But yeah, let's talk about Saturday's NHL odds. Jake, I would imagine you've got the projections up on the screen. All right, so kicking things off, we've got a big matchup between the Jets and the Hurricanes. We've got Carolina, according to the model, winning this one 57.7% of the time, minus 136. I think that's on the lower end of what I've seen out there in terms of the odds for this one. Any thoughts on last night's game between the Jets and the Stars? Statement game from Dallas. They've been in playing a tough stretch of hockey. They're tired, but they came out with 3 goals in the first period, won 4-1 over the Winnipeg Jets. Did not have Chris Tanev in the lineup. He could be in the lineup on Saturday when they take on the San Jose Sharks. But yeah, big game for the Dallas Stars. I've still got the Stars as the odds-on favorite to win the Central Division, and the Jets have 4 games in hand. But as I talked about on a show earlier this week, you look at the Jets' schedule, the strength of schedule. They've got 14, well now 13 road games remaining, and they're playing an average opponent strength of 95 projected points. So some pretty tough road games. Meanwhile, the Stars are playing 9 remaining road games, and they've got an average strength of 72 points. They're playing like the Sharks 3 times. They're playing a lot of easy games, a lot of, you would think, gimme wins for the Dallas Stars, and that's a big reason why I've still got them ahead of the Winnipeg Jets in the Central Division. But this is going to be a big matchup. I think I've seen some models out there with the Carolina Hurricanes. MoneyPuck.com. I got to bring this up because tell me if this does not change by tomorrow, because I'm like, yeah, it's already changed. He had the Hurricanes at 67% to beat the Winnipeg Jets on on Saturday, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. But I think this one should be minus 135 roughly in favor of the Hurricanes. You got any thoughts on the Jets or the Hurricanes here, Nick?
Yeah, I didn't really have much here either. I thought the price looked pretty sharp. I'm with you. I think the Stars are the best team in the Central, but not low enough on the Jets that I kind of want to fade them here. And
No, me
Hellebuck
neither.
versus Carolina's goaltending just doesn't sound like a fun spot to take on that number to me.
For sure. The Florida Panthers. I did mention earlier that I do have a bet on the Florida Panthers, minus 147 to win a half unit. You better jump on that one because some of these far away spots are opening up at around minus 165. DraftKings opened up at minus 142. There are some decent prices out there, I think, on the Panthers versus this Red Wings team in Detroit. Um, but this one kind of is. I don't think this one is going to stick around. I mean, just based on the closing line history here, you look at Detroit. They've been, for example, they were minus 142 against the Dallas Stars on January 23rd. They faced off against the Oilers back on January 11th. The Oilers were minus 165. Um, Florida is on par with the Edmonton Oilers, according to the market. You see that all the time. They, I think will close in the minus 160 range. I don't think they're going to stay where, the Dallas Stars, for example, stayed when they were in Detroit, because I think, we've seen Florida's the top rated team according to the betting market. Actually, impredictable.com, you can check that out. They actually finally, since I don't think they've had it updated since early November, market power rankings based on the betting market for the NHL. Pretty interesting look. You can kind of see where you think maybe the market is rating some teams higher than they should be, or lower. Like the Flyers were 21st, which I thought was way too low. But yeah, the Florida Panthers, they're the top team in the NHL. I don't think they will have any trouble getting here to up to minus 160. So I think you want to grab that minus 140, minus 147 price point. You've got any thoughts on this game? Of course, you faded the Red Wings on Thursday, much to my chagrin. But are you going to fade them today on Saturday?
Well, I am, Andy, because and I had even said to you in the middle of that Isles game that no matter what, I would be here. I know I think you're right. The numbers are probably going to move away, but like I had said to you before that game, my beef with the Red Wings, I do think they pass really well in the offensive zone. We've talked about this. I think they have guys that can finish down the lineup. Their fans will let you know that, and I agree. Not many teams have Daniel Sprong and Robbie Fabry type players down the lineup, right?
Yeah,
You look at the Isles, they have like Matt Martin trying to chip pucks up the wall if he can. So
Rangers, Johnny Brodzinski.
yeah, it's a little different, and I get that, and I do think it's kind of being reflected with their ability to score goals against the run of play. But the thing that I don't agree with is that they're going to be a team that suppresses offense effectively at all. You look at all the underlying numbers, they're really bad, dating back to the start of the new year when they kind of really got going on this run. They are near the bottom. I think they're probably the bottom ranked playoff team in terms of defensive metrics. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's the case. And they're getting by because of what's just been an incredible shooting percentage and save percentage. Their PDO has been the league leading since then. And I specifically don't know if it's going to end up going the way it has in terms of their ability to keep goals off the board. I don't think they're defending overly
It'll
well.
be their goaltending. I really don't think they're like we talked about last night. The offense, they do stuff that is really hard to quantify offensively. I think they can game the system there a little bit and outperform expectations. But yeah, it's going to be the defensive and the goaltending that sinks this team. And even my buddy Jay, who's probably watching right now, he's a Red Wings season ticket holder. He just randomly said to me the other day, they're going to get blown out in the first round. Doesn't matter who they play. But that place is going to be insanely loud. And I think Detroit could be, maybe the loudest building in round one if they do get into the playoffs, so I'm definitely happy that the Red Wings are back in the playoff
Yeah, and I mean,
picture.
I think they'll get there. I'm not trying to rag on them too hard. That's always the tough thing with like handicapping is you say stuff like this, and then people misinterpret that you're all just kind of
For sure.
relating it to like the betting prices compared to like what you think of the story and how fun it is and that sort of thing. The
Absolutely.
other play I do like, I actually like the over in this game for a lot of the reasons we said. I still think Detroit's going to continue to score. I think they can do that against the run of play, but I like the way the Panthers matchup heading in there, obviously. So
Yeah,
I do
Florida's been
think,
great on the road, which is not something they have been the last few years. It's something they've really turned around as their play on the road. So
yeah, and I feel like some of these teams, the more they just get established as a group, and this could just be a complete like trust me, bro take, but I feel like I did notice it with some of those like Caps teams that were together for years. They're always really good on the road. And then and some of the like some of these Bruins groups and stuff, I feel like it gets to a point where it's easier to just like tune it out and they're just like, okay, we don't care. We're just gonna play our game no matter
yeah,
what. They're not gonna notice any of the things around the edges. And I do think that's part of the thing too. I've kind of talked with you about this a little. And I think it's like a complicated thing to get into, but and I'm not saying this would be one of the spots, but I do think there's spots where I like the fact that I know home ice advantage is being priced into the game, if you know what I mean, which I
yeah,
would say isn't something I'm saying on this one, right? I don't think this game's anything special, but I think pending the travel situation and pending like what the game means to a certain team and who they are, I think there are times where I'm like, "Okay, I'm happy that this team is getting we're getting whatever value out of it being a road game for this team." And you look at how many teams do put up reverse splits for the entire season. It's a pretty long list. Like I think there's probably maybe about 7 or 8 right now in the NHL that just fully have a better record on the road. And then I'm sure you also have noticed going back to 2018 in the playoffs, I always find this to be an interesting tidbit. Last season, home ice showed out a little more, but over that entire time, teams are exactly 500. I don't know where it finished up last year. Heading into last year, the road teams actually owned a better record dating back to that and excluding the bubble, obviously, because I don't think that's really fair. But I think it just works to the point that in the right spots, NHLers at this point can figure out how to play on the road, which I don't think is overly surprising. If you take out the elements of like travel and not resting and so on, to think that like pro athletes can figure out how to play just because they're getting booed and so on. I think it's a little silly when you think about that. I know like
yeah.
you
I
don't
don't
want
think
to
the
hear it, but
fans. I've always been a proponent of fans not really being uh, much impact to home ice advantage. I don't think the bubble stats prove that's false either, because I think it's a insanely small sample that we saw there. But yeah, I mean, I guess there would be some conflicting points to dispute that, but I think what makes up home ice advantage is just the regular season as a whole. I think the grind of the regular season, I think the ebbs and flows, the being mentally tough day in day out, it's tough. It's tough for anybody to do, right? And
for
I
sure,
think collectively groups, sleepwalk into some games. I think there's just points every team, like teams sneak up on the good teams throughout the season that you don't think they would. And but if you look at things, and yeah, there's a little bit of hindsight bias, but you can see it coming too when you see a team schedule kind of getting more condensed, and you see it, or if you look at a team that's been maybe mowing down a bunch of easy teams and now they've got a grueling stretch of 6 games in 9 nights against playoff teams, and people say, "Oh, what happened?" It's like, well, that happened. The
for
regular,
sure,
a grind of the NHL schedule got to them, and I think people also put too much stock into that sometimes. When we say like, it's like, well, we probably should have saw this coming, and we'll see how they bounce back from it, right? So it's hard from a betting perspective, I think, but that's what makes the playoffs so tough for me. I like the uncertainty and the delusion of the regular season. I like the fact that I can't watch 12 games on a Thursday night. I can only watch maybe 3, 4 at a time max, and I'm still going to miss stuff because I'm, paying attention more to one than I am in the other. So I don't ever feel like I've quite got 100% handle on things. Like I don't got every team assessed perfectly, but I do think that the fact that there is so many games and there is the opportunity to get so much betting volume, you can make mistakes and stuff. Whereas in the playoffs, I feel like I zoom in on every single little mistake I make, and it's very hard to move on day to day betting sides in the NHL playoffs. So I'm not looking forward to it because I fucking hate betting in the playoffs. Honestly, when I was doing this full time, like very seriously, I would go right up until about until things, maybe sometimes even shut it down after a week, 2 weeks after the trade deadline, and not even bet the last month of the regular season outside of a few edges here or there. If we had um, something kind of out of the ordinary, like a bunch of injured players all at once or something like that. But yeah, really found myself disliking the tail end of the regular season as a sports bettor, and the playoffs. I really don't think you can apply the same principles that you applied to the regular season in the playoffs, and home ice advantage is one of those problems. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, and I mean,
One
don't get
team.
me wrong, I'm
Sorry, go
not
ahead.
saying there aren't spots where it's crucial. I just mean, like, I'll keep my eye on it sometimes, and it'll be like, rested team that I wanna trust heading into a big divisional matchup, that
For
sort of
sure.
thing. And then I'm saying sometimes I'm like, "Okay, I'll happily take this team here," because I don't really view this as a time where the applied amount of,
No, I
yeah.
understand. I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, I agree. On the playoffs last year, I had a tough go. The bubble years, I actually found I was doing really good, but I think last season, like you said, I was finding a hard time handicapping sides in the playoffs.
Um, couple of teams in tough here. Well, more than a couple, but we've got some teams playing back to backs on Friday and Saturday. So we've got the Senators and Flyers. They're obviously both playing on Friday. They'll be matching up against one another in Philly. On Saturday, we've got the Dallas Stars and the Columbus Blue Jackets both playing. Well, Dallas playing their fourth game in 6 nights against the Sharks. Still should not be a problem for them. And the Blue Jackets playing their third game in 4 nights at Chicago. Columbus is in a tough spot here. They're one of those teams where I do think they're probably better than their record shows, but um, and I think they are fully capable of playing up to a minus 130, minus 135 kind of price point. But are they the type of team that I'm really looking to back in this spot? No, I could gloss over this game and not really worry about it. But the Blue Jackets, I think, are one to kind of worry about this week because of the stretch of hockey that they're playing. They're going to play 6 games in 9 nights by the middle of next week. This week, 5 games in 7 nights, so could wear on them pretty quick. But the Edmonton Oilers, they're in action on Saturday and Sunday, in Seattle on Saturday, and in back in Edmonton on Sunday, hosting the Pittsburgh Penguins in Sunday's big matchup. Just kind of looking at this, just you know, arbitrarily, I think it's not a great buy. Like there's not a great buy spot here on the Oilers, considering that they could be starting Calvin Pickard on Saturday, and I would imagine they would save Stuart Skinner for Sunday's game against the Penguins. Who knows though? It is an out of conference matchup, but it is Crosby and the Penguins, so you'd like to think they'd put their best foot forward there. But I think you could possibly wait and see what happens with the goaltending situation here on Saturday, and then look for potentially a buy low spot on Sunday against the Penguins, because I don't think the Penguins are a very good team, and I think the Edmonton Oilers, if Stuart Skinner is in goal, should be priced as minus 165 favorite I have on Sunday. Sorry, just checking back. I know I don't have Sunday's odds up on the screen, but I did want to look ahead to that one a little bit here. So, yeah, minus 165 is what I've got for the Oilers over the Penguins on Sunday. Obviously, no odds for that one, but they will be out early tomorrow. Obviously, some sports books choose to put the second half of a back-to-back up. They offer it. Other sports books, some of the sharper sports books, let's just say it, do not, because why expose themselves to something they don't have to expose themselves to, right? And therein lies the edge. So if Calvin Pickard is announced as the starter for the Oilers and Kraken game, then you can guess that Skinner will be in goal on Saturday or Sunday, sorry. And if there's a minus, like let's say at minus 145 or better, I would bet the Oilers, no brainer to beat the Penguins on Sunday in the second half of back to back. Because Pittsburgh's also playing tired on Sunday because they're in action against Calgary on Saturday. Long winded, but bit of a strategizing there ahead of opening odds. You got any thoughts on the Oilers this weekend, or the Oilers in general? I don't think they've been playing up to their standard recently, to say the least.
No, they haven't. They've been showing a few more flaws. I think everything you said, I agree with completely. The Kraken have showed just enough for me lately that I'm not really interested in trying to buy on the Oilers there. I'd actually be interested to see maybe where the market goes if the Kraken got really long some places. Um, but yeah, I was pretty much just looking at a pass there, and I like your thinking on the Pens Oilers spot.
Yeah, and it's often how I mean, don't get me wrong, if there's a precedent like an edge that really stands out on the first half of a back-to-back, I'll bet it. But this is, I think, generally how people should look to play these games. We've got sports books, a lot of these retail sports books that have no problem putting up the early odds on the next day's games, regardless of if the team is playing or not. And they don't do so knowing who's going to start and goal. They're just going with some sort of baseline projection, and you rarely see those lines stay the same the next day. So definitely something to capitalize on there. And I don't think you need a model to do it, right? You could look back at closing lines and get a good reference point as to where a line should be, etc. So I think you can definitely capitalize on some of these spots. But as I mentioned off the top of the show, my favorite bet for Saturday's games is the Nashville Predators over the Colorado Avalanche. I've talked about a lot about it. The Avalanche lately, they have not been playing well. They're playing like really a basement dweller in a lot of ways. If you look at their underlying metrics, down in the 47% range, expected goal share since the All-Star break. And their goal share pretty similar there as well. So not a lot of differences there. Obviously, this team has a higher ceiling, but I don't know if they're the elite of the elite, like we probably thought they would be coming into the season. And Nashville, man, they've been playing really well. Their expected goals percentage is better than Colorado's over the last month, and pretty much on par with Colorado. That and their goal share. So both expectations and reality kind of on par with the Avs lately. Kicking myself in the ass for not betting over 6 in the Wild and Preds game last night. The model said that there was no edge, but man, this matchup goes over so much. 8 of the last 10 meetings between these two teams, dating back to 2020, has featured 7 goals or more. So yeah, I'm kicking myself in the ass for that one, but looking for the Preds to get another victory on Saturday. What are your thoughts on the Avs? Do you think there's any value here on the Predators at plus 117, Nick?
Yeah, I like the Preds, and we've talked about it on our pod a lot that I don't hate the over here either. The Preds are kind of playing like a pure over team if you look at their underlying process, and it shouldn't really be that surprising considering what the reasons are actually good under Andrew Burnett, how he's changed the way they possess the puck, the way they attack in the offensive zone. So I don't hate that at all. And then yeah, the Avs, I know we discussed this on here. It's been one of our good takes this year. I think that the Avs are not defending like an elite team at all.
No.
Like not even close. They have one pairing that's good defensively, and the other ones get caved in pretty bad. And their best assets are kind of their ability to generate offense. Like Bo Byram's really struggling. I know he can kind of create some good things at the other end more than a typical defender, but he's really getting exposed in some sequences. Same thing for Sammy Girard. I think he's been a little better since he got back, but still a guy that you can get to on the back end. So it's not like I don't think it's that complicated to see why they're not defending that well analytically. And like I think when you watch the games, it lines up with it because you're like, all right, this guy's struggling, this guy's struggling. They've got the Taves Makar pairing that's incredible, but they're only out there, a lot of the game, like 40%
Half the
of the
game.
game.
So
But
that's 30
yeah,
minutes that they're not out there, that the
yeah.
Avs are often getting
And the
caved
Avs
in
can
a
get
lot of
there.
areas.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong. I know they're gonna have Val coming back in the lineup here, and they should be a team trying to get active at the deadline. But I think right now they do tend to get a lot of credit for what they've been historically. So
Yeah.
I'm right with you here.
And I think you're in agreement with me that there is some value, some slight value, not a big play. Going to try to win a half unit here on the Maple Leafs at minus 112. The current odds at NorthStar Bets. They're hosting the Rangers on Saturday, and I believe you've got a little bit of a different angle for this one, though, right, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, first off, fully agree at minus 112. I kind of thought, and I think we will see the sharper books settle at around minus 130, maybe minus 125. But at minus 112, I think the Leafs I would prefer them over this. It's a take that kind of goes hand in hand. But I like Shesterkin to go over his save total. I'm guessing it's going to be 29 and a half, maybe 30.5, but 29 and a half for like the kind of defensive regimen the Rangers supposedly have is fairly high. So I'm hoping we see that. We'll see where it goes though, because they continue to give up a lot of shots to every single team they play, be it Philly, be it Columbus, whoever it is, they're getting their looks. And Igor's really just all the way back. He's been in incredible form lately. So it's a fun prop. It's a good way to try to get in. I know some of the books you can just bet on a team to go over their say or shot total, and I think that's obviously another good option as well. But it just feels like one to me where the Leafs will own their share of the play, they'll get their chances, and it's going to kind of come down if the Rangers can capitalize with the man advantage and going the other way, and if they get an elite goaltending performance. So I think there's a pretty good chance that the Leafs kind of come out and get lots of looks here. I don't know if it'll equate to a win, but it just feels like a prototypical like Rangers hang around, get a goaltending performance, find some power play goals, whatever it is. So yeah, I think that's going to be a fun prop on Saturday.
Yeah, the Rangers, they've been giving up a lot of shots, as you mentioned, and Shesterkin has been money in the month of February. We'll see if that carries over to March. The Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders. This one, they last met back on December 15th, I believe. The Bruins got the 5-4 victory in the shootout. No Charlie McAvoy or Pavel Zacha in that game. Boston closed as a minus 121 road favorite. So given how the Bruins have been playing recently, not very good. Not really surprised to see them, opening up down here with the Islanders as, not too far away from, I think plus 107 was the price I saw on the Isles here, which yeah, would make sense. But I don't foresee myself betting on Boston in these spots, given how they've played. Yeah, Isles plus 107 at NorthStar Bets. Some other books opening up plus 113, plus 120 at DraftKings. And sorry, where do I have it again? Help me out here, Jake. Where do I have the Bruins again? Minus 114. Yeah, so some value on the Isles at plus 120. That's pretty much where I would start considering betting on the Islanders, which is going against my normal routine of shitting all over that team. But Boston has been, look, they've been playing pretty poorly lately. I think if you were just judging these teams based on how they played in the last 30 days or so, you'd say they're pretty much on par with one another, I think. But Boston, you can't throw out what they did in the first 3 months of the season, and they've put up some pretty good numbers, pretty strong underlying metrics. So you can't throw that out, and that's why Boston still remains a favorite according to my model. But yeah, I don't feel good about the Bruins heading into this one, especially considering the Islanders kind of maybe rolling now. I don't know. Probably not, but
Yeah, I was actually this is kind of the bigger disagreements we've had because I actually kind of hoping to target the Bruins. I think we've kind of seen the worst of
yeah.
it,
So
but I
I mean,
don't love it.
that's reasonable. I'm not saying that it's not reasonable. I don't. I just don't. it makes sense to me why my model is saying that Boston should be a lower or a smaller underdog now than they were even back in December. Or sorry, a smaller favorite now than they even were back in December when they didn't have McAvoy or Zach in the lineup, because the Bruins were a much better team at that point than they are right now.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're someone who believes in trends from previous games carrying on, I think the overtime bet is very in play here because these two teams, it's ridiculous. The same story every night. We were joking last night when the Isles got up 3-2 every time I would text you, all right, Isles have a 50% chance now because assuming the game would get there, and they finally managed not to. But they both every night it's the same thing, just blown leads, and then it gets to overtime in some fashion. So I don't know if I'd say that's like a bettable trend, right? Like I don't know if we have like any causation that says that has to continue, but they really both have just been amazing at finding ways to let games get there after having a lead. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things I'll be kicking myself if I don't in some way capitalize on that, but I don't know if that's kind of the reason I've passed on it as much as I have with both of them, is just thinking it doesn't really seem like something that has to continue happening, and then it does. So,
Yeah,
um,
and speaking of trends, I mean, this has been a great overbet as well. If we're looking just from a trends perspective, they've combined for 7 or more goals in 6 of the last 7 meetings, dating back to March 26th of 2022. So, um, not really what you'd expect, I guess, out of these two teams, given especially maybe not this year, but especially last year, the year before, the Islanders being such a having a great goaltending tandem, Boston having great defense and goaltending as well. So, kind of surprising that you would see these teams combining for 7, 8, 9 goals every time out, but that's been the case. So maybe a barn burner on Saturday between the Bruins and the Islanders. But yeah, things, see, that's the thing, right? And we talked about this yesterday, uh, about how I find it tough sometimes to like talk about my bets, because at the end of the day, I've just got a lot of confidence in my ability to price games across the market, you know, 1,300 games roughly, right? So I think if I do that every day, I'll win in the long run. But when you zoom in on a pick and I have to like act like I've got a ton of conviction in this particular pick, it's like, no, it's just another edge in a long line of edges that I think I'm generating out of this model. So um today I'm betting on Florida on Saturday against the team that I bet on Thursday. I'm possibly betting on the Islanders, after betting against them the day before. And it's like, maybe it makes me look like I'm flip flopping around or something, but no, it's all relative to the odds, to each and every matchup. And I think that the value can shift one game to the next. And I think the worst thing you can do as a sports bettor, especially if you're just starting out and getting your feet wet in this, is lock yourself into betting on a team. Like, I'm betting on this team. The Bruins are going to smash the Islanders, or the Islanders are going to smash the Bruins, or whatever. Because then you're forgetting about the price. It's become a binary thing at that point, where you're saying they're going to win or they're not going to win, right? And that's not what sports betting is. It's trying to estimate the odds better than the bookmaker, better than the rest of the market. That's the only way I think you're going to win in the long run. And the people that get it will get it. The people that don't, well, sorry guys,
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's
I
not
think
for
the
you.
easiest way to simplify it, and I know this is exactly what you're saying, is if you're not willing to bet either side in a matchup, like given wherever the price might come out, then I think you're doing it wrong, right? Like I think if there's a spot where you're saying there isn't a number, or there pretty much isn't a number where like we could wildly put something in front of you and the Bruins are like minus 200 tomorrow, but you like them no matter what, then I think
Well,
that's a
yeah.
problem.
You see this happen though. What you're saying. So you see this happen with like some of the pundits out there that are dabbling in sports betting
This is
on
exactly what I was gonna say.
it's they lock themselves into like, okay, I'm betting on, like, the Devils are playing the Ducks the other night. Like, I'm gonna bet the Devils to beat the Ducks, and they don't think about the price or anything. And then when they go to the sports book and they check out the odds, they're like, holy shit, minus 250. Like, oh man, I'm betting the Devils to win in regulation then, because that's only
Yeah,
minus 143. Like, that's their thought process, right? It's like they've locked themselves into betting on this team. And then once they get there and they look at the price and it's not, anchored to what they thought would be a good bet, it's like, oh, well, they're still a good bet at this in this way, or on the puck line, etc. Right? They're not even considering the fact that maybe I'm just overestimating the Devils' chances of winning, or maybe I thought that the Devils would be a good bet, but now considering the odds, I don't think they can play up to that price. But they don't think like that, right? So,
for sure.
it's like I
Well, and
said, either
it's
you get it or you don't.
I think the thing about it that it kinda comes down to is how much you believe in the randomness of sporting events. There's a clear randomness to it. I've played a ton of hockey, don't
Absolutely.
get me wrong, and, like, yeah, you control the result. You don't entirely control it, especially at the NHL level, especially in the playoffs. It comes down to, like, a couple bounces, and like you said with these analysts that dabble in, betting, that's the problem. They speak in absolutes a lot. Last night I was listening to Mike Rupp talking about the playoff picture, and he said the only team that can knock off the Panthers would maybe be a healthy Hurricanes. And I just think there's so much wrong with that take.
Hyperbole, right?
Yeah, it's like, and I get that he probably didn't mean it too
He
seriously,
probably
but
said that the only team that can knock off the Bruins is the Avalanche last year, right? Like, you know
and
what I
then
mean?
every
Like,
time we get to
people,
the playoffs and these guys would, and I'm not saying I would do much better, but every time these guys get there, they'd probably be like 4-4 or 3-5 picking the first round matchups. And it's like,
yeah.
yeah, there's a little bit of variance that comes into the game.
You could pick 60% of the playoff series winners correctly. So there's 15 in a playoff season, there's 15 matchups from the start of the first round to the Stanley Cup final. You could go 9 or 10 out of 15 simply by picking the team with the stronger shot share at 5-on-5. Like I've looked at like 12, 15 years of data, something like that. And yeah, if you just pick the team with the stronger shot share, the better 5-on-5 shot share, you'll be right 60% of the time. Are you going to win money betting like that? Probably not. No.
No,
But
because like,
yeah, but
I
as far
mean,
as
if
just
you
picking winners, like it's not that hard to do. Somebody going 10 for 15 in the playoffs is like it's not that hard to do. Like it's almost you should go 9 or 10 for 15 picking playoff series. If you don't, you've had a really bad season.
that's what I was just gonna say. Like, it's if you're just gonna look at it from that way, because some of the first round matchups will be teams that are like minus 400. So yeah, if you're gonna,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
you go 10 for 15,
Just
but you
pick
cook
that
in
one.
some of the easiest
You'll be
winners.
right most of the
Yeah,
time,
not
right?
not as impressive as it seems.
For sure, yeah. But yeah, no, I do find it interesting when I see that and we saw I think the most egregious one was obviously when Tampa was running away with the league in 2019, and of course they blew the 3-0 lead to the Blue Jackets. Was it? Yeah, right. That's what happened. Or no,
In game
they got
1?
swept. They got
Yeah,
swept,
they
and then
blew
they blew a
3-0
three
in
nothing
game
lead
1.
in game four. That's what happened. Uh, but I bet on the Blue Jackets in that series, and they were like plus 330 or something like that to win the series, right? And I had to go into that with every hockey pundit saying there's nobody that can beat the Lightning in a 7-game series, right? And I thought the Lightning would win too, and that's the thing that I tried to explain to people after the fact when they're like, people are asking me, "How did you predict the Blue Jackets would win this series? What made you bet the Blue Jackets?" I'm like, "I didn't predict the Jackets would win. I thought they were going to lose like 65, 68% of the time or something like that. Like, but they didn't. They were priced as they were going to lose like 75% of the time. So that's why I bet them, right? And it wasn't that I was right. It was just I was less wrong than everybody who thought that the Lightning were going to win 100% of the time, right? Like that's how you got to look at sports betting. And I think there are some great examples out there, especially leading into the playoffs and how to think more probabilistically and how to think of. I think the playoffs are a great example of the range of outcomes, right? Because a playoff series has that, all of those different scenarios that could be the permutations, right? There are so many different ways. I think there are, I believe, 36 different ways that a best of 7 series can work out, in terms of the order in which the teams win the games. Home wins the first two, then the visitor wins the next two, etc. So yeah, it's a great way to look at hockey and start thinking about it in the right way. But I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna let Nick talk about any other picks that he might have for Saturday, if he does have any more picks for Saturday, because I've just got the three that I mentioned. The Toronto Maple Leafs minus 112, that's a half unit play. Florida Panthers minus 147, half unit play. And a bigger play, 1 unit on the Nashville Predators at plus 117. That's it for me for Saturday, but we've got some other games here. So I'm not sure. Nick, do you got anything else that you like on Saturday that you're willing to share with us today?
No, I think we got them all. I think there'll be some props I have my eye on, but like you say, it's the same thing, right? It comes down to the numbers. So there's guys I'm watching I think are trending low. The one obvious one, but who knows if the number will be there because it's Columbus. But Bedard is trending so low in terms of shots, and I do think there's going to be an opportunity to buy. Part of it's been the schedule. Part of it's been a surprisingly low amount of power plays, which
He just
that
looks frustrated right now too.
he
Like
looked pissed last night,
he looks
which he should have
super
been.
pissed.
He can't
Yeah,
get
he doesn't
they
want to
can't
be on a
find him.
losing team that's getting blown out every night, right?
Yeah.
Like
It just seems so bizarre to me, and that's the thing where you don't wanna mingle too much in terms of being a fan versus a handicapper, but it does seem crazy to me to see where, like, his shot prop line is getting. Granted, like, given the way that he just wants to be such a pure shooter, he plays so many minutes for them, like, he's the focal point of everything, and it's almost like an interesting take on how truly horrific that team is, that this guy can't get 3 shots off in a game. I don't think his number will, or I don't think he's gonna stay, like, trending as low as he has. I think we're gonna see him bounce back here, and I like the spot, but sportsbooks also know that, so it might still move to to whatever, like minus 175 when it was minus 145 and he missed last night. The other thing is too, he did hit 2 bars last night. So that also works against the total. So that's kind of the one I have my eye on, but
I'm always going
who
to
knows?
die on this hill that I think posts and crossbars should be counted as shots on goal.
It would be less frustrating for sure.
I think no, I just think I don't like I think that it is I don't know. I don't
Or
know
you know what
why
I would
I don't know
like to
why
see.
the definition became that doesn't count as a shot to the net. It's a part of the net.
Yeah. Well, I agree. It's not
And
quite
most of
in it,
those
so
shots that hit the post are more dangerous than the one that hits the like it's a
oh,
more
it is.
valuable shot. So
It
why
for
isn't it
sure
being
is.
counted as anything?
That's why I wish it was just an easier stat to see and to track. Like, I think it'd be nice if in the game score it just said Connor Bedard hits the crossbar. I think that
It's
would
like
be kind of a cool change. So it'd
it's
just
like
be a
if a
whole
guy
third
goes bar
different thing.
down, post it in. Like is
And it
that
just
it?
said
Like
score the goal.
should we take away his shot on goal because he didn't really hit the goal. He hit the post and then it bounced in the net. Like I don't know. It's just I don't know. And I know this is stupid, but
It's
it's
not an
always just
important debate, but I do think it would be nice if you could always just see like, you know, so and so hit the post, so and so hit the bar instead of having it. And it is interesting from a handicapping standpoint. I know it doesn't hold that like high danger chances, all that will always tell a better story. But it's kind of interesting. Like you look at the Flames last year, they led the league in posts hit by however many it ended up being, but it's not easy to look that up. It's not easy to see like to see that, but I do think it's a very easy way to be like, all right, well, they were this close to scoring however many times. So if you lead the league by 20 on that, it does kind of tell a bit of something.
yeah.
Um, but anyways,
That's that would be something interesting to look into because the Flames also led the league in 1-goal losses last year, right? So I think by a mile, if I'm not mistaken. I think they had like
well, that
20.
was why everyone thought they'd do better this year, and I was a little in that boat because they lost so many shootouts in 3-on-3, so many
Yeah.
1-goal games, hit so many posts. Their underlying results were so good, which I think was a little skewed because they take the stupidest shots ever sometimes,
Yeah.
even if they're
Quantity over quality.
yeah, and like I think they would get interior shots, but not with any kind of movement. So I think some of the public data was getting a little confused with kind of the quality of the looks, but
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
they
I
did
think
not.
and I think Calgary, I mean, they yeah, that's that's uh that's another story for another day, but yeah, thanks, Nick. I appreciate you joining the show today. We will make this obviously a regular Friday thing now that Jake's not taking any more vacations. And yeah,
All right, awesome. Thanks for having me,
good luck
guys.
with your picks this weekend, buddy.
Yeah, you too. Unless you're fading me again, then less luck for you.
I didn't even know you were on the Islanders when
I was due to win one of those.
I would have
I
doubled
didn't
up
even
if I
gloat. I
had
was
known
just
you
like
were
it,
on the
you
Isles.
know,
But
had to happen at some point.
all right, say hi to
Uh,
Liebach for me.
oh yeah, I'll be sure to. He'll be telling us about how the Isles are now winning the cup again.
Delusional. Drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel if you have not already. If you haven't, what the fuck are you doing? Get it done. Thanks to Nick Martin. Go check out the Line Change Hockey podcast over on the Action Network YouTube channel. Also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I'm sure, just as this show is. So you can check out the show here on YouTube or on Apple or Spotify podcasts. So we'll see you on Monday for a new episode of the Puck Portfolio. But until then, good luck with your bets. Gamble responsibly. March is Responsible Gambling Awareness Month, and don't be a square. That'd be my first tip. Spend some time, read a book maybe before you bet on sports. I don't know, like learn some stats, math, stuff like that could actually help you. Uh, be a more responsible gambler. I recommend actually here look, I'll do it right now. Knocking shit over. Here are some books that I can recommend. Actually, one more that's not sports betting related, but I'll make you smarter. Yeah, see you later, Nick. This one is Squares and Sharps, Suckers and Sharks. So you don't want to be a sucker or a shark. You don't want to be a square either, but it's really hard to be a sharp. But this is a good book. It'll help you out. And then we've got the theory of gambling and statistical logic, actually important in sports betting. I know, crazy fucking thought, eh? Then we've got the logic of sports betting. Logic, not something a lot of people have, but it's important if you want to bet on sports. And then finally, we got thinking fast and slow. This one, it's a drag. Don't get me wrong. It's a long book. What's like 500 pages, and it's about behavioral economics. Like boring shit, but really interesting. And yeah, it really kind of shows, like, taught me a lot about how ass backwards my brain works, right? So I've, I don't think I've gotten any less bias. I don't think I'm any less prone to falling victim to the cognitive biases that are present at all times in our brains. But at least with my sports betting, I can kind of try to combat that a little bit with some modeling, etc. And not just let my brain lead me astray. But yeah, some good books to make you a better sports bettor. We'll talk about them more maybe next week. But until then, take care, and I'll see you on Monday.